Let's start with Matt. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up starting Alluvial Farms and what initial steps you took to get here.
Yeah, I got plugged in with the local food farm scene down in the Bay Area. It was my first real exposure to it of California. Kind of fell in love with it, both the work and the people and the community, and ended up here in Washington many moons later and was employed through a program that helped people get started. And I was kind of using my experience, both education and in the field, to help mentor new farmers through a program, and that was actually where Katie and I met.
We met working at an agency that helped other people start small farm businesses. So it became our job to know all the resources, all the financing tools, and in fact, one of our clients was launching a pork business. So for 2 years, we helped her to farrow pigs, market pigs, herd pigs. We actually lived on the site where her pigs were, and she lived off-site. We convinced ourselves it was possible to start a small farm business, and then had exposure to the pork industry through our client, and we're convinced that that would be a great way to start.
In terms of starting for you guys, what was the initial upfront investment to get these 46 acres?
We were in business for close to 3 seasons before we found this farm.
Okay.
They call it, in the pig business, they call it feeder to finish. If you're buying in a baby pig and growing it to harvest weight, and then selling the meat. And they call it farrow to finish. If you're breeding the pigs, they're born on your farm. So we were feeder to finish, and our initial startup cost, we got a $12,000 operating loan from ICU that the food cooperative backed us on, was co-signed, and that $12K allowed us to buy our first bulk feed purchase, and I think our first litter of pigs.
How many pigs?
That year we raised 50 pigs on at least 5 acres. We also, at that time, we had a tractor that was probably a $12,000 to $15,000 investment, and then shortly thereafter we got a USDA grant for value-added production that allowed us to do a lot of marketing and pay our processor, which after feed, the processor is the second biggest cost.
Expense, okay.
And that was a $45,000 grant over 2 years. And then during that whole time, we're looking for land.
We found this 45 acres right at the foothills of Sumas Mountain, yeah. And so sure enough, we landed and we couldn't be more pleased, because down here we have nice deep soil, and then up top we have this well-drained soil, which is great for livestock in our climate. That was a price tag of $500,000 for 45 acres.
Okay.
Of raw land.
Oh, of raw land.
Well, let's go check out those field pigs, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're brave. Just to see.
How many acres would you need to get started on a small scale for a pig farm business?
Pigs can be hard on ground. In this situation, you can kind of see them out there just really turning over the grasses and working things up. So in our case, it's a 45-acre parcel. We've set aside 10 for this riparian zone, so that leaves us with 35. We have about 5 acres in infrastructure, and so that leaves us with 30 acres to work. And a portion of that, half of that right now, is in grain production, which means that the hogs aren't on that ground. So that leaves them 15 acres to rotate on. So we think that's a good amount of space right now for us to both produce some of the calories for the animals, to create some bedding with the straw that we bale, and to be able to keep them moving around in a climate like we have.
And one of our rules of thumb is in this climate, about 1,000 pounds of livestock per grazable acre is a good stocking rate. And you take the weight of the animal over the course of its life.
It's okay, I don't mind getting dirty. Okay. I mean, I will eventually.
Yeah.
Well, distracting us a little bit here from our purpose. So we're doing an afternoon feeding, like you said, right?
Afternoon feeding for the nursing moms.
For the nursing moms, and this is their candy, you guys. Katie, what's in here that they absolutely love and adore?
When they're not nursing, they get about 5 pounds of food a day.
Okay.
When they're nursing, they can get maybe 12 to 20 pounds of food a day.
So, Katie, when you guys got started, how did you first advertise the business? What really worked? What really brought good results to get the name out there?
So year 1, we harvested 10 pigs, and that was friends and family.
Okay.
I think we did have a website for year 1. Year 2, we did 50 pigs, and that was where we really kicked the website into gear, and we started going to the Bellingham Farmers Market. And we also did one time a year, we did a farm tour with Sustainable Connections in our early years. And I would say when people came out to the farm and they met us, we signed them up on an emailing list, and I now have 1,000 people on my email list, and we would send a monthly newsletter. And so after that personal connection, they had been in the field with us, they had seen our pigs in the field, they had met me and Matt, looked us deeply in the eyes, and they were like, okay, I know that's where my pork is coming from.
Where's this going to be?
It just has to get dropped in there. Here, I'll give them one to distract them, and then you can put the other one.
Oh, okay. So they get 2 of these.
They do.
Here you go, Mom. Let's talk about expenses. I know we touched on that a little bit, but what's your overhead monthly? What are the most expensive 2-3 things on a monthly basis?
Yeah, well, we have all of the same things another business would have as far as overhead, your utilities and connectivity, right? And so that we can operate a business out of here. We work with an accountant. While Katie does most of the books, we still reconcile with our accountant, and so there's just an overhead cost there around finance. The big ones that we get into, and it feels like there's a constant repair bill, right? There's always a repair bill. We've got pay for ourselves that we're now starting to roll into the business, and then we come into some of the bigger ones, which would be like once a year purchases of, in our case, we do organic field peas that we mix with the barley, and that's 30 tons at a time, right? And so that's a big expense to the tune of like $13,000 to $15,000 a go right there. So that can really inflate our monthlies over $20,000. Whereas, in general, they're probably below 10, probably in the 6 to 8 range when we fold everything in.
You guys make sure you go to our blog, upflip.com/blog. We've got a complete guide for you on how to start a farm business. In general, I want to start something today, small scale. What's realistic to budget for monthly expenses?
The feed and the butcher are the most expensive costs. So there's going to be a one-time in the spring, let's say, cost for buying bulk amount of feed. And then after that, your monthly expense is relatively low.
We're in that range of $5,000 a month, which, is still significant, but big months where we've bought bulk feed, we do buy in organic field peas, and so that's a big semi-load, right? And that's going to up our monthly expense to maybe $22,000 in a month.
For that month, though, but it's segregated over...
Totally.
Yeah. So here, operating on this 45 acres, 120 pigs harvested last year, monthly expenses range from $5,000 to $22,000 a month.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned buying used equipment.
Yeah.
Why used versus new? I mean, there's low rates. Buy a brand new tractor.
Totally. I guess it goes either way, right? You either have a loan payment for a piece of equipment, or you're going to have a repair bill for fixing the equipment. Maybe sometimes both. But we chose to go the route of buying some modestly priced equipment. There's a lot of it out there. One piece that's really important is making our own feed. So mixing and milling our own feed. We grow the grain. We pay somebody that has a combine to harvest it and put it up in our grain bins, which are way up top. It holds about 2 tons of our mixed ration. And we can customize for the nursery that need a little more protein, and for our breeders that need a little less protein, and also bring it out to the field and refill feeders.
What would something like this cost? And then the tractor, what did you buy that for?
It's not ridiculous. We bought the mixer mill at an auction, but I think we've only got like $7,000 into that.
Paid about $7,000.
Yeah, and the tractor, for a 100-horse tractor, again, it's early 90s, it's a little bit older. You're looking at $15,000 to $20,000 for that with a little bit of work, and it can certainly go up from there.
Now, you guys are over 180,000 year 4, right? What's your year 5? So what's your expected revenue for this year? And what are your tips for growing revenue as a small family farm?
Well, this year, the pork revenue, we actually are not anticipating growing it. We're going to try to kind of harvest about 120 animals. And our expenses were, keeping pace with that. I would probably say that I would not call this business profitable quite yet. As we see when we get up top, we're still in a huge construction construction phase. We're building a home, a retail space, and an enormous composting facility. And once those expenses have been made, those capital investments, I think our operating will be much more efficient. And so that will give us a chance to improve our margin. We're going to add 2 new enterprises, which are going to take the same maybe 5-year runway that the pork enterprise took to launch, which is hemp for CBD and grapes.
That's how you're growing your farm
Once
business.
those enterprises are launched, they're both more scalable than pork.
We're standing here in the 10-acre conservation easement that you, Katie, mentioned in the beginning, right? Tell us a little bit about that connection, how it helped your farm.
So the Whatcom Land Trust had a vision for trying to help new farmers gain access to farmland. They also had an idea that if a farmer found a piece of land that had ecological value, that they could take out of farming and put into ecological services.
Like the salmon-bearing creek
Like the
behind us?
salmon-bearing creek behind us, and 180 feet from that salmon-bearing creek, which in this case equals 10 acres, that they would pay the farmer the loss in value of your land, and they came up with the value that we were losing by giving up access to farming this 10 acres was $100,000.
You guys, so we're going to continue on with the interview. We're going to eat some delicious pork sausages from pigs from this farm. In terms of meat processing, I know you guys have touched on that a little bit, but walk our audience through just the process really quickly. What happens on the day when you pick up the pigs, and then what comes back after?
The mobile processing unit comes to the farm. It's a semi, it has a USDA inspector, clean space inside, cooler in the front, so that after harvest, the carcass can hang in the cooler in the front of the semi before it goes down to the brick and mortar facility in the next county down, where it gets cut and wrapped under inspection too. So harvest day, we can, we do in the range of like 10 to 20 animals. Within a week, usually, they're cut and wrapped. They do a great job of putting it into packages, and whatever instructions we provide, they'll break it down, and then we go pick it up once it's frozen, vacuum sealed in these beautiful vacuum seal bags, and our label on there, and the USDA stamp, and then we can go pick it up, and if it's for our custom clients, we'll deliver to them, and then otherwise, we get it out to our other outlets.
Thank you. This is delicious, by the way.
Yeah.
So how many pigs do you have on the farm right now?
Right now, I think we're at 133, and that's both young ones like we have here in the nursery, the growers that were out in the field, and our breeding stock. We keep 14 sows and 1 boar.
And these guys are, I'm guessing, the breeders?
These are our breeders. It's a Berkshire hog. We also have an old spot, but we're primarily focused on that Berkshire old spot cross.
Which is right here.
That's what we're doing.
Why is that? Are they different meat quality or different what?
Yeah.
What's the advantage?
Yeah, we really like the lean to fat ratio in the carcass, and so it's not going to be nearly as lean as what you might get in a grocery store, which historically is just that some of that fat has been bred out, and it's been, you get a leaner carcass. There's some breeds, heritage breeds, that are very fatty, or what we're called lard pigs, and we're not going to that extreme, so we're trying to find something in the middle.
So what's in front of us, Nick? Go ahead and show all the different cuts and pieces, but what's your best seller? What would these things sell for?
So this unseasoned ground pork, we're selling this $8 a pound is the retail for 1 pound of ground. This is probably one of our best sellers, as well as pork chops. We do sell that for $12 a pound.
Okay.
So we do mostly a bone-in pork chop. 2 chops per pack there. It's about a 1 pound package. And this has been kind of a slow grower, but it's bacon, but without the cure. So it's the belly, fresh sliced pork belly. So people
no seasoning whatsoever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People use it for in ramen or in noodle dishes. This is a roast, a shoulder roast that's often used for pulled pork or carnitas. Takes long, slow cooking. These are just some of the cuts. I think we probably have about 16 or so different cuts that we market retail.
Okay. you guys are venturing into the hemp and grape industry. What's the thought behind that, and why go in that industry? Other than that, it's a big business, of course.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? Is the feds opened the door in 2018 Farm Bill to legalize hemp.
There's a lot of literature out there about the healing properties of CBD, and
that's the reason you're jumping in?
That is the reason we're jumping in. We saw an opportunity to combine the CBD oil with the rendered fat of the pig to make a topical salve, which you have a sample of there on the table. So that salve right there is just beeswax and lard and CBD distillate and some geranium essential oil. So it's all farm-based products that we know exactly where they came from. We have a second or third enterprise that we're launching, which is this year we're planting.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, they're great.
We have a partnership with a vintner who it's sort of like a guaranteed sale for the majority of that grape crop, which we hope to expand to 5-acre planting within a few years. And so we'll have a beautiful bottle of sparkling rosé that has been produced by another business from grapes from our farm.
That's awesome.
So there's 3, right? We've got hemp, we'll have grapes, and we have this pork. And so there's some diversity in there that brings in different revenue streams and hopefully complements the others as well, right? So that it's working together.
Everything's in unison.
That's right.
So we see a Peruvian restaurant here.
Well, that's a good segue to our building. We're going to take you there next, and we're going to show you our vision for how we're going to bring people here and give them all these amazing, tasty things.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Whoa!
That would be a blooper. Me and Matt fall on our backs. Now let's talk about what your day-to-day looks like. We also have a foundation behind you. Love to know what that's all about, what your vision is, and how many hours a day do you guys even work as well?
Well, pigs, they sleep in, so it doesn't necessarily have to be super early morning, but feeding is a daily thing. We manage our feed for the animals in the morning, the breeding stock in particular, they all get fed in the morning, so we like to get up here, and that usually kind of corresponds with our 10-year-old getting on the bus, right, and getting out the door. But starting with that, making sure that all of the nursery pigs are all right, getting eyes on all the animals, maybe a little bit of bedding down if need be, and checking water and food first thing in the morning.
And then there's sort of a veterinary schedule. When the pigs are born, we call it the first processing happens at 3 days. We castrate the males and give them a vaccine against respiratory illness and ear tag them. So that's at 3 days, and then about 10, 15 days later, they get a booster for the respiratory vaccine. So that's some of the maintenance that kind of goes into the pigs. And then there's always some computer and administrative work. We have a few grant proposals that we're working on right now. The launch of the new enterprise, we have a marketing consultant that we're trying to work with, and we're trying to purchase a few more materials so that we can do our next run of the salve. And then we're the general contractor for this building. So we are building here a place where
check out the plans, guys.
we can live, but also it can be a place where eventually we can get conditional use permit from the county to host eating events. Could this be pork sandwiches and beer? This is sort of what we're working with. Is that you're coming home from the mountain, you need food, you don't have time to cook, you just go to Alluvial, get a pork sandwich and a beer, or a pork sandwich and a sparkling rosé that was grown here, you know?
Talking about equipment, why don't we switch gears here? Show us what's most important that's close to where we are, and I know you said we'll need to hop in the truck and take a look at some of the bigger stuff. So what's here that we need to focus on?
Well, let's step into the barn. We've got our skid steer, which is a daily piece of equipment that, farming ultimately ends up being moving stuff around a lot.
Okay.
And the more efficient you can do that, the easier things are and the better off you'll be. So the skid steer has been a great tool for us. It's got a bucket, it's got a quick attach, you know, that we can swap and put forks on. But yeah, it's mainly for moving things around.
Just within here?
Exactly. Well, primarily, but we can bring shavings in and drop them in the stalls real easily. We can scrape things out real easily. We can turn our compost real easily. We can load our manure spreader real easily. So it becomes this tool that's just very flexible in our everyday.
What's it cost? What was it
used, you know, you're in the $15,000 range for modestly priced ones, but they can quickly get up into the $50,000 range, $60,000 range. So again, that's a choice, you know, you got to make as far as investments.
What's a slow month? What's a busy month in terms of revenue?
Yeah, so the business has shifted from that weaner to finish to now where you just have a few slaughters in the fall, right? You buy your pigs in the spring, and so they finish all in the fall, and that's when you start realizing revenue.
I see.
And we've switched the business, recognizing it needs to be a little more consistent. We're farrowing now, and it's allowed us to control that production so that we have pigs finishing maybe every other month.
6 times a year, basically.
Exactly, and we schedule out our slaughters that way so that we're harvesting anywhere from 10 to 20 animals per harvest. And then once we get that product back, which takes about a week to 2 weeks from the processor, we can start selling that if we've already had it sold, like for the custom shares is a big part of our business, or just fulfilling other orders.
What do you mean custom shares? I want to stop on that for just a second.
Yeah, so the business really started there with families that were looking to fill their freezer with a whole or half hog.
Okay.
And so we call that a custom share because the client gets the opportunity to customize how they want it cut and wrapped, right?
I see. What's the revenue look like per month? I mean, how if you split it up, gross revenue?
Yeah. You know, we're looking at in the range of $15,000 to $20,000 if you just average out the yearly, which that's what we're aiming to do, right? Is not to have peaks and valleys, but to just have a little more consistent flow of both products coming out of the fields and getting into the hands of the customer.
Now let's talk about your growing of grain here on the farm. Why do that versus buying something, you know, from another farmer? What made you guys go that route?
Yeah.
And where do you store it? Let's check it out.
Yeah, we'll walk around to the grain bins. We put all this infrastructure in grain bins that were actually readily available from local dairies. So that gives us a storage of around 50, 60 tons worth of grain and field peas. And then the growing of the grain, you know, you run the numbers, and depending on how much your land costs and what it's best suited for, it was something that we thought we could grow the grain, certified organic grains, cheaper than we could buy that in as a product.
Okay.
So it has helped us lower that price point for the, you know, cents per pound that you're looking at as a hog farmer, and how much it costs to feed your animals, right?
All right, so let's start right here with this thing that looks like a...
What the heck is that?
Yeah, what is that?
This is a grain auger for moving materials. So when we receive grain, like up by the grain bins,